Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. This is Justin from the Path to Life channel. When you do some real research, you start to discover that society holds some general misconceptions about the history of the human race. The mainstream academic circles have fed us lies. The Judeo-Christian perspective gives us a limited lifespan of around 6,000 years. They've actually convinced people into believing this planet is only 6,000 years old at the most. Why would the powers that be want to give us all of these false perceptions of our past? There's a great deal to uncover in the pursuit of the answers to this question. First, it raises more questions. How deep are the lies? There's been a lot of focus on our history lately. People are becoming aware of the fact that most of our history has been changed, and most of it appears to have been fabricated. I'm going to do my best to summarize some of the things I've recently uncovered. I'll also give you my conclusion on where this information has led me. This journey of discovery started long ago for me. It was 2007 when I first read a copy of Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. This raised my awareness to the fact that there is a lot of evidence of past events that still can't entirely be explained. In many cases, where the obvious truth is too extraordinary, that truth is omitted, and the issue is either ignored or we are given false information. This is where the so-called experts have failed us. The best kind of education is self-education, and the answers to many of life's mysteries will never come to those who don't value truth and wholeheartedly search for that truth themselves. People that buy what they've been selling are easy to lie to. This leaves a void to be filled with info and explanations that suit an agenda of control and deception. A people without a history is like a tree without a root. When we let someone else feed us lies about the roots of our race, we are giving them the opportunity to grow whatever kind of tree or society that they choose. Life on this planet was much different before we were led astray. History is not a science. It's more of a story that has been laid out to form the foundations of a new global empire that seeks to oppress and further degrade us. I'm not talking about a few little lies here and there. Our true history is very different from what we've been taught in school. It's just always been that way. They don't want people to know what's really going on, and of course there's a reason for that. When you start to look at the patterns and cycles that the Earth goes through, you'll understand that if everyone knew about these things, people would not be doing what they're doing now, and society would not be so easy to control into the current economic slavery system. These control tactics have been used against the lower classes of society for thousands of years. When you start to see what's been deliberately covered up, you begin to understand the potential and possibilities of how deep the lies go. I've written a few articles about the ancient history of the human race. Instead of including too much of that information here, I'm just going to list a few of those articles in the description section of this video. I'll admit that some of these articles need a little bit more elaboration, but they're a good start for someone that's looking for answers. When it comes to ancient civilizations, we can only speculate on the advancement of some of the achievements of these ancient societies. Many past accomplishments we can prove can't even be replicated or explained by today's greatest minds. I believe that there was a far more advanced global civilization that collapsed near the end of the last ice age. Some of the advanced knowledge that remained has been spread across the earth. There's some indication that society prior to the 1900s, or even perhaps up until the 1900s, operated with free energy. One thing is for sure, certain ancient monuments do show advanced methods of stonework. I believe that it wasn't due to electricity or power tools, but a more efficient technology that harnessed natural forces like the sun, wind, water, and sound. These technologies were not recorded in history, but if natural forces were used, there wouldn't be much evidence in the archaeological record apart from the products of that technology, which is what we see today in the form of perfectly drilled granite, intricate diorite vases, and perfectly fitted irregular stone walls. At some point in the distant past, there was a global root language that we can still find traces of in nearly every language. This is also an indication that there was a worldwide culture. Tartaria is the name given to that culture because Tartaria was its greatest nation, taking up Asia, Mongolia, and Russia. This also seems to include sections of the North American continent, the South American continent, and at times maybe even the Philippines and Australia. The question is, what happened to Tartaria? It would appear that there were some wars like the Napoleonic War and the War of Genghis Khan, and the War of Troy that all seemed to be connected to each other and seemed to be related to the overthrow of Tartaria. In order for this to be true, some of these wars may have taken place much more recently than we have been taught, not thousands of years ago. What were the events that led up to these wars? There have been clear cycles of cataclysm that can be traced back to the ancient world. Maps of the North American continent prior to the mid-1600s don't even depict the Great Lakes. Many of the old world maps show California as an island. We can't verify the accuracy of some of these maps, but they do seem to indicate that people lived through many Earth changes. Mainstream sources will tell you that we have no accurate maps prior to the 1500s because people did not travel by the oceans in those times. There's a mountain of evidence that suggests that this is incorrect. There are too many traces that connected these cultures together to assume that the oceans prevented them from communication and travel. Oceans do not separate cultures. They serve as more of a bridge than a barrier. These ancient people had common knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and similarities in theological ideologies. There are correlations between the changes on the maps that we see between the 1600s and the 1800s and the lack of sunspot activity and solar minimums that happened at the same time. When looking at the charts of solar activity, you'll find that these solar minimum events happen about every 200 years. We are actually entering into a solar minimum this year. When you think about that, it's easy to see why the government is pushing climate change. They want to trick us into thinking that we are causing it, even though they all have the data and knowledge of sun cycles and their effect on global civilization and the climate. In the face of what's to come, it seems ludicrous that they're referencing global warming and spraying chemicals into the atmosphere in order to block out the sun and lower global temperatures. There have been many warnings about the coming of a mini ice age. It makes you wonder how many people they're planning on wiping out during this next solar minimum. We can't reduce the world to carbon zero. We are carbon-based life. Just think about the programs they're putting into people. People are pushing for their own extinction without even knowing that they're doing it. How did the ancient people survive climate changes in the past? They went underground. The recently discovered underground city in Turkey is a huge multi-leveled city with houses, shops, and marketplaces. It goes to show that the people that came before us knew of the events that took place on the surface of this planet and knew that they needed to be sheltered from it. People were not living underground by choice. Think of the enormous amounts of underground cities we can find from the past. Now think of the underground bases and sea vaults that they have created today. Living underground would be a desperate move for any human being. So, what were they hiding from? We all know of multiple stories of global floods from multiple cultures and time periods. The Georgia Guidestones indicate that there is knowledge of past disasters and future events that will wipe out a large portion of the population. What is NASA up to? Besides misinforming the public and being used as a smokescreen for top-secret undisclosed projects, could they be tracking one or more celestial bodies or planets that are known to cause upheaval on Earth and cycles that have actually been recorded and hidden from the general population? If the Sumerian and Mesopotamian cultures knew about Nibiru, a planet that shares an elliptical orbit with our Sun and its binary counterpart, it's quite possible that this knowledge has been well recorded and known by the same people who have dominion over society in these modern times. Could Nibiru be the cause of global flooding events or shifts in the magnetic poles of the Earth in the past? Ancient texts seem to suggest so. Around the mid-1600s to mid-1800s, we would find reports of strange atmospheric disturbances and an irregular occurrence of comet activity. Another thing that has been hidden is the correlation between global events that happen in cycles and the acceleration and decline of human consciousness. We are obviously experiencing a decline at the current moment. We can also see a reduction in the size of living creatures. We can see traces of giants that were around as recently as 100 years ago. They are the remnants of the most recent cycle. It makes you question how big people were prior to this decline in size. Is the loss in size and consciousness caused by the further compression of the atmosphere? There are so many aspects of the human condition that have changed. It isn't just physical, what we eat, what we think. There are all sorts of levels beyond that. Our interaction with the atmosphere, electricity in the atmosphere, and our bodies, and the type of electricity that we're using are examples. There's been a loss in the use of ethereal energy. What kind of energy was used in Tartaria? We can find multiple pictures of the old world's fairs that seem to show electrical devices. It almost seems as if this was a place where they gathered all of the old Tartarian technology and put it together for one big viewing before it was destroyed or hidden from the public knowledge. We have plaques showing buildings that are producing free energy. We can also see plaques that depict men fighting in tournaments that appear to be using electrical weapons like electric swords. There are also pictures that show electrical devices being used in warfare. We can find reports of how warfare was changed in the 1800s due to the introduction of the electrical machine gun and the electric cannon. You can find depictions of these devices. You can even find pictures of what appear to be sound weapons during World War I. These can even be used to create something like a mud flood. Mud was very prominent during this war. They even had problems bombing people because their bombs would simply land in the mud and not actually explode. The ancient people knew the power of sound. What power does sound have, you might be asking? Cymatics is the study of wave phenomenon. Sound vibrations can come in contact physically through the body and have an effect on our consciousness at the mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. Cymatics gives us insight into the fundamental structure of matter and how this physical universe is a product or reaction of sound. It allows us to directly observe the creation of the material structure of this dimension and the force that creates it. This unseen energy is the force behind all creation. Sound can create and heal or destroy. The question is, what can sound not do? Organic life is tied to the ambient frequency of the earth. The ancient people had a deep connection with this energy of the earth and knew how to use it to create things that we can't even imagine. Stretched all over the face of the planet are temples, churches, and sacred sites that are strategically built to resonate with Earth's natural energy grid. I'm starting to believe that some of these temples were not places of worship, but they were actually places of great healing. Many people go to sound healing sessions even today. It was Nikola Tesla that said that the earth is ringing like a bell. The frequency of earth has definitely changed over time. We can only imagine the increased level of energy and resonance that the ancient people were able to experience. For the Western world, the Schumann resonance represents the Earth's electromagnetic field. It has always been concentrated at 7.83 Hz, with few variations since 1952, but has recently changed. In 1921, amateur archaeologist Alfred Wilkins made a discovery. He noticed that ancient sites at different points around the world all fell into a sort of alignment. Be the sites man-made or natural, they all fell into a pattern, usually a straight line. He coined these lines ley lines, and in doing so opened a world of supernatural spiritual beliefs. To those who do believe in ley lines, the concept is quite simple. Ley lines are lines that crisscross around the globe, like latitudinal and longitudinal lines that are dotted with monuments and natural landforms and carry along with them rivers of supernatural energy. Along these lines, at the places they intersect, there are pockets of concentrated energy that can be harnessed by certain individuals. So you can see why there are some skeptics. I think the existence of these ley lines is very apparent, and even the ancient people of Earth knew this. Over time, the human race has lost its resonance to the Earth's natural flow of energy. 432 Hz is rooted in musical history, geometry, science, architecture, and more. From the Egyptian pyramids to Stonehenge and the Schumann resonance, numerous occurrences of this mystical number have been uncovered from different corners of the globe. Almost all of the music you hear on a day-to-day basis, whether in your car on the way to work or playing over the speakers at a local restaurant, is tuned to 440 Hz. It's the international standard tuning and has been since the mid-1900s. Yet when we change our key of tuning for the A note to 432 Hz, though it's only a difference of 8 cycles per second, there's a noticeable difference in our consciousness and even our bodies. We have been intentionally guided into a state of discord. This has led to a decline in consciousness, resulting in a disconnection from our past. This has also served as just another way to reduce the human lifespan. In the Bible, you'll find stories of people easily living to be over 300 years old. The oldest man to live according to these stories was Methuselah, who lived to the age of 969. Could that have been from the resonant frequencies around them? They don't want us to know that the ancient cultures were much more in tune with their higher nature and their brains. There's a huge focus on this in so much ancient architecture. When you look at the statues in Egypt closely, you may realize that many of the statues, even the headdresses, appear to be depicting human brainstems. Even Michelangelo's painting of God on the Sistine Chapel ceiling looks like a brain. You get some sense that these people knew about the accomplishments we can achieve through the application of consciousness into this physical reality that we live in. It isn't just the Egyptian culture. If you look at the Vedas and nearly all ancient societies, this is not just New Age philosophy. There was a real effort to make sure the importance of spirituality and human consciousness was stressed through their teachings. This is something that is very absent from the modern world. This kind of stuff is pushed aside and we're told it has no real value in the economic world. This lack of focus is something I feel is responsible for the current reality of the human condition. Are we really supposed to believe that the cord of the pine cone, which represents the pineal gland, was put there by the Vatican? Or was it put there by some earlier culture like the Tartarians? Why does the Pope carry around a staff with a pineal gland on the end of it? Could it be because they're hiding the fact that the Vatican has calcified our pineal glands? Or is it because they picked up the remnants of an old culture and started promoting the wrong concepts about reality and just using old tools to do so? It's not just a war on consciousness, it's our brain and our biology that is used against us while the ancient knowledge has been hidden away. This is hindering the level of spirituality that we could be reaching, or at least stopping us from being on the level that we should be. It shows that it shouldn't really be difficult to reach the levels of consciousness that we once had. It may be as simple as changing our diet and getting our biology back in order. There are certain events that have taken place that people probably didn't want to remember. Hiding from the dark truths of our past has put us in a position that will leave us unprepared to face future troubles. We know that there have been massive depopulation programs that have been carried out on this planet. We can find the remains of at least 6 million people in just a 2-kilometer section of tunnels under Paris. The interesting thing about them is that all of these bones are very clean, and some have been stacked up to intentionally form sigils or symbols. When we look at the past 150 years or so, in all of the orphan trains, children were distributed across the world and settled as orphans. These are memories that go way back, and we just don't think about these sorts of things in society today. We can also see entire cities that were destroyed only to have a new city built on its ruins. Some of the ruined cities are only about 200 years old. There are even monuments and remnants of cities that have been found in the oceans. Just think of everything that has been lost to our past and forgotten. In the future, I will be elaborating on some of these subjects. If you find this video valuable, give it a like, and subscribe to my channel to get notifications when I make new content. Thank you for watching.